introduced you, Jean-Claude, is very difficult, you know, to give limits to a personality like yourself. You made of your extroverted take to all aspects of life your trademark in so many ways. To me, and we have never met personally, but for, you know, what I received from you in these 20 years of small career in the watch industry, is a spirit of entrepreneurship, creativity, innovation, leadership, vision, with always an independent mind, an independent drive. Which one of these resembles to Jean-Claude Biver the most?
I think the most that resembles to me is the one you didn't mention, and
typically,
and that's passion.
Yeah.
Passion is driving me. Beside passion, love is driving me, and passion is an expression of love. Love has many expressions. For instance, sharing is an act of love. Forgiving mistakes is an act of love. Respecting nature is an act of love. And same, passion is love. Art is love. And that is driving me. That is the most important element, I would say, that are characteristic of me. It's passion. Then entrepreneurship means freedom, vision. You cannot be in a cage and have visions, or it's impossible. So entrepreneurship means freedom. You can decide, but it means also you can do wrong. You can make mistakes, and that is also belongs to the learning process. Don't be afraid of mistakes. The mistake, as long as you don't repeat it twice the same, every mistake brings you closer to success. So these are my characteristics, if I may say.
It is good enough, Jean-Claude, you know, when after a career like yours, of course, we say you learn from mistakes and you push forward, and the more you are wrong sometimes, the more you learn. But in your case, you got quite a few things right, you know, from the time when the industry was in disarray during the quartz crisis, to have the guts to go out there and to claim that Blancpain would have stayed the only mechanical watchmaker, a complete shot in the dark in a way. It could have been a mistake, but it turns out it wasn't a mistake.
Yes, it was the mistake. You know, I was protected against mistakes. How? Because I had people around me, and I had people that were not yes people. They were advising me. They were telling me, listen, I think this is wrong. And I have always said, my people is my biggest success. And the people that have been around me or with me, the oldest one started to be with me in 79 and was with me from 79 till June 2020. So that's already quite a long time. Then if you have the actual CEO, Mr. Guadalupe, the CEO of Hublot, has been with me since the 80s. So that's 30 years together. So my team that was around me has always been a big asset, because I was constantly checking my ideas or my visions with the team, or reverse, the team was checking their ideas with me. And at the end of the day, we were 5 people plus me, and these 6 people have been able to challenge each other, to admit the mistakes, to declare their own doubts. And so we had a very open discussions, and that is why, at the end of the day, we did relatively small mistakes.
Very good. So sharing, yeah, as a big element to gain the respect as well of the people that were working with you, and people that you had to influence to be able to be successful. You know, we are, in our small reality, we are a platform that is all about sharing content related to independent watchmaking. So we only focalize on the independent brands or contemporary watchmakers. And today, like no other times in history I've seen before, sharing is the key, because marketing has become sharing of knowledge rather than pushing people to buy or pushing people to do an action in your favor. Do you agree with that?
I agree that the most important part in business and in life is sharing. We must know, and we know, let's say we must remember, we are just born because a human being, a woman, has shared her body, her blood, her hope, her pain, her oxygen with us during 9 months. Without the sharing process of a woman, there would be nobody being born. We are born through a sharing process of 9 months. But after these 9 months sharing in her own body, we are born. But then the sharing continues, because if the baby would be born and the mother would stop sharing, not giving him milk and heat and education, the baby would die. So the sharing process is the basement of life. No sharing, no life. And this is how we are. We have to follow this rule. The rule is given by nature, by planet, by life. So everything you do, you should always never forget to share. And sharing makes rich. If I share with you, it makes me rich. But accessory, it can also make you rich. And that's a win-win. And that is the beauty of sharing. It's win-win.
Which is absolutely, it makes it so precious for you to share this time with us as well. And it's through the miracles of technology that we managed to meet, first in this way rather than in person, in a way. It's how things are changing. Do you think, you made me think of a spontaneous question. Whilst, talking about watchmaking, the British tradition became predominant and then disappeared. The French tradition then followed and disappeared again. The German tradition had a very, very high peak as well, and then didn't manage to keep any form of success similar to the Swiss tradition. Do you think the Swiss industry, and we are living very tough times as we have lived in 2008, if not worse, Swiss tradition, again, Swiss watchmaking tradition is still going to pull through this, because this sharing element and an ecosystem that sustain both mainstream watchmakers and independent watchmaking interconnecting together is driving things forward at all times. And I finished the question. I have seen this in the last 4 months, like never before, a great interest for independent watchmaking when the times are, probably the worst we've been through in so many ways. Do you see that as the secret of Swiss watchmaking?
I think what we see now is a certain concentration at every level, a concentration at supply level, because some suppliers might have not enough work, some suppliers might be bought by other suppliers, or certain suppliers eventually would close their factory, or other suppliers would be bought by brands. So we see a concentration at supply level. We see also a concentration at brand level. Some brands, let's wait another 6 months and we'll see, some brands might be bought by others or by groups. Then we have a concentration at distribution level. We can see shops closing or shops being bought by Watches of Switzerland or Boucherer, etc. So concentration on distribution level. And at the end, we also see a concentration from the customer, the end customer, for few brands. They all go for Rolex, or they all go for Patek, or they all go for AP, or for Richard Mille, or for. So we have a concentration at every level. When you have a concentration at every level, what happens? Niche are growing like mushrooms, because the more we have concentration, the more there will be niches around that opens. That is the biggest chance for independent brand to go into this niche and to exploit the niche. And in the niche, they are safe, they are alone because these big brands will not care about niches. So the niche industry will start and as never before. Just wait a little bit and we will see all these independent brands finding their niches. Okay, once you have your niche, you must also know how to exploit it. You must have a message. You must have the right product, the right price strategy, etc., etc. But nevertheless, never before, except maybe in the 80s, did we have all these niches that are opening. And I encourage all the independent and all the people that are passionate like me, just try to identify a niche that fits you, that fits your character, that fits your passion, that fits whatever. So, and then we have more chances to exploit the niches than we had before.
Absolutely, absolutely. Very interesting. And also, it's important to understand your own place in a way. So we found a reason to exist because when we started, independents didn't have any representation on the high street in in the brick and mortars retailers. Now the situation is changing because they are getting some more interest, if you like. But for a brand, not everybody can be Hublot and become from a small independent a global international brand. On the contrary, the more mushrooms, like you said in your analogy, are around the big brands, and the more you probably need to understand that that particular niche is where you can be strong, and it's better to be a leader in a smaller niche rather than a big follower in a bigger one. Do you agree?
I agree 100%. And you know, probably I will exploit one niche, the beaver niche. there is a niche for me now also. Because as most people know, at the end of the year, I will retire from all my duties and responsibilities at LVMH and Hublot level, and I will be just beaver. And what will I do? I don't really know now, but I think passion, you can retire from a job. You cannot retire from a passion. How can you retire from love? No, love doesn't retire. So I cannot retire from my passion. I can retire from the job that I had, but not from my passion. And probably I will look for a niche and eventually I will try to have fun, to enjoy, and to teach young people. If I do a brand, I would only want to have unexperienced people on board. Eventually, not the master watchmaker, but a lot of young people that have difficulties to find a job because everybody says we need experience. And I would like to transmit in my future brand, if I do a brand, I would love to recruit people to whom I give back all my knowledge, all my experience, all my doubts, all my successes, all my visions, all my instinct, in order to help these people to get the same feeling than me. And that would be a kind of watch brand and academy. It would be both. It would be a brand where you can teach, where you can learn, where you can get from the master, from me, a lot of little tips. And my 45 years in this business, they can be useful. So you see, I am a real fan of the niche, and I am born in a niche. Blancpain was a niche in 1982, and it grew quite big. Hublot was a niche also in 2004. But if I do a brand, I will promise it will not be as big as Hublot, but it will be fun. It will be fun, and it will be family. We need family spirit. We need human beings to talk in the eyes, to touch people, and to be faithful to people, and to be reliable to people, and to offer service. That's all what we need. That's all what we want. And the more you have a small niche, the better you can serve. And at the end of the day, we have one king. It's the customer. The end user is the boss, not the brand. and not the CEO. They are just servants. They serve a customer. They serve a king. And they must, and this is something that we must still learn, give service. And that's,
big time.
And that's where I want to go.
Big time, Jean-Claude. Is as a little parenthesis, one of the toughest things for us to implement in the last 5 years was to make brands aware that we are focused on the customer and we try to look from the eyes of the customer. All the rest is irrelevant in a way. But Jean-Claude, thank you for this articulated answer, because of course, the answer that everybody, if you see on the feed here on Instagram, but also I had the question before our live, everybody's asking, when is the Biver's brand happening? People can't wait to see if, when, and how. A little provocation for you, Jean-Claude. We were talking about sharing. And you know that one of the biggest things happening is that the best watchmakers, the most successful brands are all now fighting to get the customers more and more frustrated as possible. So actually what you like is often not available. If you do a brand as Mr. Jean-Claude Biver, the situation would be immediately that, yes, you would want to be in a niche, but everybody will want to get hold of that brand. For example, Laurent Picciotto from Chrono Passion just wrote, you know, you will be a goer for that. On our side, same thing, if you will ever think of the limited edition. But how do you connect sharing and the need for sharing with this big attitude from most of the successful brands to actually frustrate the customers as much as they can in order to raise values, in order to create perception of value that is sometimes justified, sometimes less justified?
I think the brands are not doing it on purpose. I think there is, if you want high quality to see, if you look at the Royal Oak watch, if you look at the Nautilus watch, I took those two on purpose. How well they are built, how thin they are for a sports watch. It's like a piece of five Swiss francs. How ultra slim they are. At the end of the day, we understand that you cannot produce 200,000 pieces. So if the maximum eventually is 30, 40, let's say 50,000. But today, more and more people are concentrating and going on these watches. I remember when I started at AP in 1975, we couldn't sell in many countries. We sold in Italy, they loved it. You
were with Philippe Dufour at the time as well.
Yes, I was with, of course I was with Philippe. Of course, we are friends. We have started more or less together at AP.
So now he's the king of contemporary watchmaking.
He's the king, yeah. But you see, I don't know. I don't think they do it on purpose. And you see, look at Rolex. They are building a new factory to increase. Since Jean-Fred Dufour has come, I don't know, he must have increased production by at least 100,000 pieces. It's my guess. So they don't do it on purpose. They are very, very much sensitive that the customer, you should never frustrate him. You should give him joy. You should give him hope. You should give him pleasure. Don't frustrate the customer. You must be stupid. So I think brands don't do it on purpose. It's just that we have a concentration of customers going more and more on few brands. You know, today, if you ask, what are the successful brands of today in a certain category, at luxury category, you will end up citing 4 or 5 brands only. So that is why we have a shortage in production. Not that the production is kept on purpose low, but because they cannot increase so much. And secondly, more and more customers are coming into this type of brands.
Yeah. Very, very interesting. So Jean-Claude, because we are live and I'm gonna make the most, otherwise some of our followers will be frustrated, and your followers, because there's a lot of questions. If you agree, I will shoot a few questions for a brief answer, and then we carry on with our chat after we answer a few of these questions. So Nimolu is saying the brands should stop concentrate on competition and focus more on the customer, because they are the ones that make their success. So this is not really a question, but it's a more of a...
It's an answer.
Exactly.
It's a statement, and it's true, by the way. It's a good statement. We must not forget the customer is the king, not the CEO, and even not the brand. It's the customer who is the king. And we are just servants of the king. We are employees of the king. The CEO of a brand is the employee of a customer. It's as easy as that. And we must just get this in our heads. Because very often the CEO or the people of the brand, they think they are the king. You know, and they behave sometimes like the king. But that's not true. The customer is the king, and the CEO is the employee of the customer.
That's a very refreshing view, and to which I totally obviously agree. And there's Lucas asking, Mr. Biver, would you say that the sharing part of life is actually the most fun, as we were talking about sharing?
It's the most rewarding. It's the most, it's love. And what is better than love? I don't know. Maybe after the paradise is maybe better than love. I have no idea. But as long as we live, as long as we have a heart, love is the best you can get. What is better than love? I don't know.
Absolutely, absolutely. We have a question from Dolce Vita as well. Jean-Claude, is it more exciting to find a Biver niche? So will it be more exciting to find that, or to produce your own cheese, for which we know you're very passionate as well?
Both cheese and watches are the same. They were made in the same farm. In the 18th century, all the watches of the Vallée de Joux and Jura of Switzerland were made by farmers. They were made during winter time by the farmer. And then summertime, he was stopping and he was going back with his cows to the chalets. So watches are born in farmhouses. So that's why you can never separate both. And this is why, look, in Switzerland, if you visit Breguet, if you visit Blancpain, if you visit Jaeger-LeCoultre or whatever, you will end up in a farmhouse. Okay, transformed into a factory now. But this is the same. And people just have forgotten the history. And that's a tragedy when people forget histories. You know, I can tell you just an example that I had today. I saw an extraordinary Royal Oak perpetual calendar skeleton from 1995. 1995 in platinum. Platinum, Royal Oak, perpetual skeleton. Wow. And I said to my son, do you know that this is the watch that reminds me the big boss of Audemars Piguet? His name was Georges Gaulet. And my son said, oh, but I thought it was Genta. I said, no, it's the big boss called Georges Gaulet, who gave to Genta instructions to develop a steel watch, water resistant, with a sporty, elegant look. And Genta came out with the Royal Oak. But the guy who gave the start without Georges Gaulet, AP would not have made the Royal Oak.
So the gentleman that hired you at Audemars Piguet.
Exactly, Georges Gaulet. And this is the truth, and that's history. But most of the people, they don't know the history, and nobody talks about Georges Gaulet. Everybody talks about Gerald Genta. It's good to speak about Genta, but we should never forget also the guy, and Georges Gaulet was the first disruptor. That was such a disruption, to sell a steel watch at the same price than a gold watch, to sell a steel watch with screws. And to sell a steel watch with octagonal shape. In those days, in the 1971, 72, that was insane. That was never, people said, what's that? That's not a luxury watch. A luxury watch must be ultra thin with a crocodile, and it must be in platinum or in gold. but not in steel. That is, so he was the first disruption. He made the first huge disruption, and since then, everybody has followed on the same track. Like Nautilus has followed the Royal Oak, etc., and the skeleton is now everywhere. So sometimes, because we don't know the history, we forget important things like the cheese and watches, like Georges Gaulet and Genta.
Absolutely. And in those days, of course, I wasn't there yet. I was born in the 70s, and I was in a different country. That was in Italy, which Italy was a big contributor to the development of kinds of watchmaking. But I come back to that later on, because my question was on it was so crazy to be independent in those days, although everybody was independent, but I'm talking about independence in mind of going off the tracks, like you just said, Audemars Piguet did with the Royal Oak. Same with the brands like Corum, that maybe Corum in those days was one of the really few brands that dared to go a completely different way. Was Corum perceived already as something relevant in those days, or was just a tiny little niche?
No, Corum was a design brand. They were masters in design. Every year they had incredible collections. They had incredible innovations. They had new dyers with new materials. And I mean, incredible. And Mr. Banvar, he was a product manager before becoming the owner of Corum. And because he was a designer and product manager before becoming the owner, he brought to Corum all this richness of design. It was a designer brand. It was the first designer brand, the first luxury designer brand. And every Basel fair, I first started in '74, my first fair, we went to Corum to see, hey, what have the design boys brought us now? It was a real pleasure to see Corum. Corum is a fantastic brand. Today, I don't know much about it. I don't know what they're doing. But excuse me.
Oh, we lost you for a second. No worries, no worries. It happened to me yesterday as well. Of course, of course. So, just for me to remind everybody. Fantastic, yeah, because those were the how can I say, when I refer to independent watchmaking mindset, those were the days where there were the first sparkles, if you like, whereas, as you're saying now, these days we're living a situation and a phase where independent watchmaking has never been so creative and so established. You know, I would say luckily for those that are passionate about that. Jean-Claude, I wanted to also, for the followers that are tuning now, we are live with Jean-Claude Biver, absolute legend of the watchmaking industry for the last 5 decades. Somebody that is really difficult to introduce, but feel free to post your questions. We have a few here, Jean-Claude, about we've been looking at the past now, looking at the future now. I know that you consider one of the recipes of your success with Hublot, the brilliant revelation you had that Hublot had to appeal to the new generations, to the millennials, to those that were going to come after, you know, the guys that were appreciating watchmaking in those days. So a guy to watch is asking, how are the millennials changing the watch industry, and what's your take on that new generations? How will change watchmaking?
The millennials are changing our world. I say, we are still in the 20th century. And people say, how can you say that? We are 2020, that's 21st century. I say, no, from the mathematic, 2020 is mathematically into the 21st century. But the reality is that we are in the 20th century. Why? Because all the people that have their hands on the industry, on finance, on the economy, on art, on culture, on politics, they all are born in the 20th century. And they have transported their concept, their philosophy, their capitalism, their socialism. They have just brought it on the 1st of January. They haven't changed. They said on the 31st of December 1999, welcome to the 20th century. And then they woke up on the 1st of January. What have they changed? Nothing. Same people, same way to behave, same politics, same kind of wars, same ecology. Nothing has changed. When the millenniums will be in charge of the century, that's around 2030, 2035, when the first millenniums will come and have the century in their own hands. Then we will feel that the century has changed. So the millenniums are our future, and the millenniums will save planet Earth. The millenniums will make life better on this planet. So that's my biggest hope. That's why I'm so optimistic. If I would know that the future of this century are made by people from my generation, I would be very pessimistic. Because I know it's the millennium, I say, wow, I hope I'm going to live another 40 years till I'm 110, and then I will see.
Oh, I lost you for a second. Can you still hear me? Can you still hear me?
Yes, yes, I can see. You know, my phone is telling me that the battery is going to.
Oh, it's nearly gone.
That's why,
okay.
Yes, I had to recharge it. So
okay.
I hope it will not stop.
If it stops, we know why, and
exactly.
we'll try to
it
use
will
it
be the battery is dead.
So I was going to come to some bigger questions, Jean-Claude, and you've been anticipating me, because I feel so much for what you're saying. We are running a small campaign at the limited edition. We're still saying, for the watch industry to survive, I mean, it will surely survive, but to thrive in the future, one of the things is to find sustainability as well. For the first time, we're seeing brands that are really actively investing and bringing on this message. From our side, one small message that we gave is, do we still need alligator straps, for example, in our industry? Do we still desperately need, alligator straps because they were seen as luxury in the previous century? So from that point of view, how imperative it is now for mainstream and also for independents to start thinking concretely on sustainability, if, not just on a moral point of view, but from a business point of view. You are right. There are things that will not be considered acceptable in a few years' time. So how important it is to act now?
It's very important to act now. It's important to act not because it's a fashion. It's important not to act because it could bring success. It's important to act because it's a conscious. We have to be conscious. There is no other way. And to use a crocodile or to use or to check how gold is made or how platinum, where are the diamonds coming from, that's just normal. That is how it should be today. It's like having a kindergarten in your factory. Look around Switzerland, go to every brand and see how many of these big brands have built a kindergarten in their own plant for the women that are working with in their factory. If you employ 50 women in your factory, you can expect that a few have children. You can expect that a few will need to bring the kids close to where they work, and you should make a kindergarten. It's not. It should be normal, because that's the ethic behavior and that's the respect you give to a mama. You cannot, so these changes are only coming when people get conscious, and then they have value. Okay, if it starts because it's fashion, because you can have some coverage, why not? But at the end of the day, the conscious must work, and the conscious must tell you what to do in order to be right.
You touched on another very good point, Jean-Claude. I've been to so many factory visits. I was lucky enough in my years in the watchmaking industry, starting from Girard-Perregaux, which was the first brand that had there to employ me at the very beginning. And I have seen the number of women, of ladies involved with watchmaking. Watchmaking is made by ladies, but that's something that you find and you discover when you dig. But it doesn't really come across in terms of the image of the watchmaking industry. That's another thing. I don't know. I mean, I'm sure you will agree that has to change in a way. Is diversity. Like the planet needs biodiversity, watchmaking, like any other industry, needs diversity in that respect as well.
Yeah, of course. We need diversity. We are born with diversity. You must remember, in the past, women were extremely important in the fine-tuning of the watches. They were the artists to give birth to high precision. In French, we call it les régleuses, the one that are regulating. That was a typical lady job. and it was the most important one, because that's the heart of the watch. And the heart of the watch was mastered by these magic fingers of these women. So, but people are just, because people ignore the history, ignore the past, they don't know it. But women were the majority. We had more women occupied in our watch brands than men.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's I remember clearly in the Three Bridges atelier at Girard-Perregaux, it was predominantly women, and not that I was surprised, but it's just that at the end it was more the men getting the praise and getting
of course, because the world is still macho, but the world has forgotten then the strongest person on planet is a woman, because she gives birth. Whoever gives birth is stronger than the one that is born.
Sure.
And if women stop to make babies, there is finished. So the woman is the most important person in our life. It's the person that we should respect the most. And the more you go to south countries, south of Europe, the more we see how women are important, how the position of women. And look at the Catholics. Maria, they pray for Maria. So women, it's time now that we realize that we are the weakest men, and the strongest is women. And we should love women, and we should respect women.
Amazing. And Melika is saying women can multiply anything you give to them. And it's a nice way to put it. And Jean-Claude, coming back to trying to give some value to new entrepreneurs, new watchmakers that are starting now on an adventure, like it happened to me 5 years ago. We're still digging deep, in order to try to be successful with what we do. But vision is so important, Jean-Claude. When the quartz crisis came, there was one guy in that era, it was obviously yourself, saying, I'm going to go completely with Mr. Piguet, completely against the flow. And if everyone is doing quartz, and there were most of the brands, they had at least 70% of their production quartz by the time the revolution happened. Brands like Girard-Perregaux actually went deep into quartz, and they even set the criteria for quartz at the time. So these days, Jean-Claude, I was very safe when I was asked by the few people, collectors, that asked me for advices or sharing information. When the Apple Watch came and the digital technology that we're living, digital revolution that we're living these days took over, just as a reminder, not for you, but for who's listening, the Apple Watch is now selling more in volume than the overall Swiss industry altogether. You immediately said, don't worry at all, I've been through this, and this is going to pan out as a good thing for us, for the watch industry, for mechanical devices, because it's going to teach everyone to wear something on their wrist for the new generations, and it's going to teach what else, Jean-Claude? How could you be so positive to instill in people like me? I was fine after that. I heard you, and I went out and said, don't worry, guys, Jean-Claude has been through this, we will pull through.
It's extremely easy to understand. The connected watch, smartwatch, is a miracle of technology. I have already my 4th Apple Watch. I buy every one that comes out. I am a fan of Apple Watches. So it's an extraordinary technology, phenomenal. It's a miracle. How could we ever have believed that we would watch TV on a ski lift from our watch? I mean, this is incredible.
We can't get away from it.
It's extraordinary. Now, the problem or the weakness of an Apple Watch or whatever watch, if it's from Samsung, doesn't matter. The problem is that technology goes into the future by killing the past. If we can find next year a 3D 4-color TV, nobody will buy a black and white TV anymore, and nobody would even buy a 4-color TV. Everybody wants a 3D color. So technology enters the future by killing the past. In other words, technology always becomes obsolete. After 2 years, after 4 years, after 5 years, one day it's obsolete. And then it disappears, it dies. A mechanical watch is never obsolete because it can work for centuries. So the connected watch is driven by technology and obsolescence. The mechanical watch is driven by heritage and eternity. And eternity has no competition. The only competition of eternity is God. And that's it. So in eternity, you have one competitor, God. So,
absolutely.
And that's why.
And let me add, Jean-Claude, also, consumables, commodities are not sustainable. And again, we are going to a world that needs to be sustainable. So even as far as watches are concerned, maybe that's a card in our favor as well.
100% in our favor. And you know what? What is beautiful is you can have both. You can wear your Apple Watch because you have a health problem or because you want certain informations that are necessary. And you can wear your beautiful mechanical watch. They don't compete. They don't compete. It's two worlds. You can have a smart car and you can have a Lamborghini. Who cares? You can have both. Where's the problem?
I know a gentleman.
The only problem is that in the lower segment, quartz watches from Swiss brands that are close to Apple prices, they eventually would suffer. Eventually, you will see, because a customer might say, "Why should I buy a 2 or 3 hands quartz watch when for the same price I can have an Apple Watch that gives me all the necessary information about my sport, my health, my music, my friends, my connections, my mails, etc., etc., etc." There you might have competition, but in the upper segment, no way. It's just complementary.
Yeah, yeah. But there is a question from Barbara Palumbo, one of our friends as well. I will attach it to another question. But if you do own a Tag Connected, obviously for those that don't know, the Tag Connected was the first smartwatch by Tag Heuer. Mr. Biver had the intuition straight away to give eternity to that watch as well by offering a credit to customers that would come back with the connected watch once that became obsolete. So Barbara is asking if you own one. And I want to attach to that as well, Jean-Claude, the fact that when I was saying Italians built a little bit the love for mechanical watchmaking, as it happened in Europe, in France, for example, then prices of watchmaking went so far up and so much, they went so much faster than the average salaries of those people that in the 80s, in the 90s could afford a Rolex, could afford a Royal Oak, and so on and so forth. Then now the category at 3,000, 4,000, 5 francs is becoming very important for those that are still in love with that art, I can't possibly afford it. So this is where the big battle will be, as you're saying, will be fought between digital, smart, and mechanical.
If you compare 1974, that's when I started, you compare a pair of Adidas sneakers was retailing maybe for 20, 10, 15, 20 Swiss francs. And today it's probably 250.
Yeah.
So it was multiplied by 10. It's more or less the same for watches. So if you have a T-shirt from Supreme, a T-shirt from Supreme is probably 250 Swiss francs. But it's quite expensive for a shirt, a T-shirt. And eventually on the gray market, it's even more. I know people that have paid maybe 500. So this is our world today. And there's a discrepancy between prices and salaries. And this again comes back to sharing. We must learn to better share also the resources and the salaries of people. And we still have, thanks God, it's not general, there are niches where people are not paid enough. Look at the hospitals, these nurses, they are paid. I mean, it's a scandal. And now suddenly we realize, so we have to adjust. Some adjustment have to be made. The next thing I want to say, you must not forget, when I started in the business, $1 was equal to 5 Swiss francs. Five.
Yeah.
£1 was equal to 20 Swiss francs. Now, $1 is 90 cents.
Yeah.
I mean, it went from 5 Swiss francs down to 90 cents. Same for the euro, same for the pound, same for the lira.
Pound is 1.2 more or less. Yeah.
So the Swiss watches have increased much more outside Switzerland because of the exchange rate. And that is, we cannot fight against exchange rates.
We can't control that. Yeah.
We can control our cost, but we cannot control the exchange rate. So the exchange rate is also responsible of this price increases.
And the second was, do you have a tag connected in your collection, or do you?
No, I don't have one. I have 3. I have one for each generation.
Of course. Yeah, brilliant. And Jean-Claude, in terms of the creativity that is necessary to pull our industry forward in the future, there are people like, I could mention Recep, FP Jaune, Viennet Alter, some. I think I can see you now. So again, FP Jaune, Ressence, Viennet Alter, some independent watchmakers that are starting to create a bridge between the mechanical world and the digital world, like it happened with some hybrid creations between quartz and mechanics. Now it's starting to happen. If you look at Ressence, for example, what they just recently did, is happening between the digital and the mechanics. Do you see the two worlds colliding and interacting together, or do you see as two things that will go different ways?
It's difficult to marry a Barolo wine and water. This is why in our gastronomy, we always have 2 glasses, one for the wine, one for water.
I like the analogy.
So I prefer the 2 glasses than all in one.
Yeah, very clear. It's although of course it's intellectually interesting to see where you can push research.
Intellectually, it's interesting. No, I was a little bit joking, but I think it's in the air of today. You see it by cars. The most successful electric car is a hybrid car. So to have hybrid, why not? There is probably a way. The problem for me,
there's a bit,
as
there's
long as
small
you have
issues
a,
in
as
connection.
long as you have a battery, I have a problem. We should get rid of the battery. The battery is the problem. So as soon as we can create energy with the wrist that is sufficient for electricity, then we have then I can see a very good combination of the two.
Very good, very good. Jean-Claude, you gave us nearly an hour, which has been amazing, and I know your phone is slightly
Yes,
playing
and
games.
my plane is leaving in 35 minutes.
Okay, so I'll, you know, there's so many other questions, and I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as we've done. And I really hope to have you again one day to go deeper in some other topics that we couldn't. Look,
Yes.
I had a book full of questions for you, but
no. We make a deal. We do this. You give me a new date in January or February, and then we do this interview again with all the different questions. I want to come back on air because it's also a problem for me to leave so quickly. I have enjoyed it so much to talk to you and your people that it's frustrating now to go and to gate number 16 and to fly to Dubai. I would like to stay with you. So let's do another chat in February or January. You decide, you give me some dates, and then we can do this again. So
that would be perfect. Thank you so much. You have a safe flight, Jean-Claude. Enjoy Dubai as well. And yeah, I shall see you very soon. Thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Ciao.
Thanks a lot. Ciao, ciao. Ciao. Grazie mille.
Ciao.